Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning's book study on The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. My name is Melissa Wally, and I'm an innovation coach with Keep Indiana Learning. I also serve as an ed tech specialist and technology coach for Hanover Community Schools. Today is our very first official session with the book, and we are going to discuss Chapter 1, The Surge of Suffering. Diana and I will be the hosts of each session, and then we are also going to have a few rotating guests who will join us. And today I get the pleasure of introducing our first guest, Amy Stevens. Welcome, Amy.
Hey. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Again, I'm Amy Stevens, an innovation coach with Keep Indiana Learning, and just proud teammate of Diana and Melissa, and just super excited to be here. I work at South Henry School Corporation as a project Lead the Way specials teacher for grades K through 5. And I'm also a technology integration specialist with the teachers. I do a lot of work with Apple through the Apple Distinguished Educator Program, and just really, truly love to model for students being a life learner. And this book is one of those many reasons. When I think one of my favorite things about this summer, specifically hanging out with Diana and Melissa, was that question of, hey, what are you reading? And this book came across our plate, and then we were like, we should talk about it. We should read it and we should talk about it. So here we are. So thank you so much for not only bringing this book into our hands, but giving us the platform to share the content and just the ideas that we're going to be talking about each chapter.
Diana, you're muted.
Man, you can tell I'm rusty from having the summer off and not doing this as often. So I'm Diana Knox. I am the third part of this trio today, and I am a technology instructional specialist at Clay Community Schools over in Brazil. I'm an ISTE certified and a Canvas certified educator. I serve on the HEC board with Melissa, and I'm an innovation coach with both of these lovely ladies for Keep Indiana Learning. So we're excited that you're here with us, and we're ready to dive right in. Now Melissa's muted.
Well, Diana, we do follow similar paths. So we are certainly going to dive right into the book because there is so much to talk about with this book. It's like we decided that this was the book we wanted to focus on, and then it's like we were seeing it pop up everywhere. And there's a lot to talk about with this. And I've seen Jonathan, I keep seeing him pop up. I know he's been on a couple talk shows, and I've seen him online, and some of his comparisons really do speak true and speak to the heart. So right in the introduction, the comparisons that he makes hit home for me as a mom and as an educator. And what he compares the change in childhood that's happened throughout, since I think he starts since 90. When does he start? When did he say it started?
The really big change started like in the 2010s, like 2012.
2010s, yes. Yeah. Okay. So sorry about that. I was dating myself. So in the 2010s, so he compares that change in childhood to growing up on Mars without any knowledge of what might be there. So if you think about that, like right at the beginning, he says, like, would you drop off your child? Would you sign your child up for a trip to Mars without any knowledge of what's going to happen there? Of course not. And would you allow your children to be test subjects for that? Of course not. And so he's comparing like what has happened in the change of childhood to this trip to Mars. And it's so interesting. And it sounds so, it sounds like something that would never happen. But then when you really look back, and it's not something that's arbitrary, what he's describing and what he's referencing is fact-based. And it's not just tied to one singular event, but it's the result of a series of events. And so that's what we're going to continue to dive into. But with that being said, there is an overarching question that what are the main factors contributing to the surge in suffering? And that's the title of the first chapter, The Surge in Suffering. And it's a pretty dramatic title. It's something that really took pause to me to like, oh, the surge in suffering, like all of this suffering and it is rising to the top. And it's a powerful title.
Well, and it's even, like tidal wave is like part one. So it's like that even makes me think it's like really big, right? Like a tidal wave is coming in. Something that I'd love to just, point out is all three of us are, just willing and open to invite these voices, these thoughts, these opinions to the table of this like conversation that's like happening mentally, because, we didn't grow up with this technology. Like it really hit us much later in life when our brains were, according to some of the science and data that's in here, more fully developed, right? And so, when we talk about virtual friendships, real friendships, this idea of childhood today versus the past, like, always know to our listeners that, we are open and we do provide this opportunity to talk because we realize that this is a very important conversation to have. And so we're welcoming these thoughts and ideas. And something that hit us is that the three of us started off as virtual friends. And it's just kind of fun just to see, like, did we, when we did finally meet in person, how did that friendship cross that bridge, I guess? And then what is it like both ways? And it would be so interesting. I don't know about you guys, but some of my friends' kiddos have been starting off their freshman year in college. And it really wasn't so scary because virtually they've already become friends with their new roommate, with their new dorm floor mates, with maybe some classmates. And could be people that live across the world, right? But virtually they're friends. I'd be so interested to find out how their friendships are now that they've spent a couple weeks together in person, in that real person. But that was something that I wanted to share as the book gets started. There are these definitions of friendships, of who the audience is, like who is Gen Z, and so forth. And I'm so excited just to get into this and keep talking some more about the why for writing this book. I've heard a lot of parent groups have been reading this book at school corporations, and really working with the teachers to find out what is that good balance of school issued device and usage at school, at home. And so I think we'll uncover a lot of that as we discuss.
Oh, absolutely. And thinking about, like, I started teaching, and I'm going to age myself here, but I started teaching in 99. Wow. And so I was on the cusp of that Y2K, what's going to happen when we go to the new millennium. And I had been teaching for almost 15 years when technology really insinuated itself into the conversation in my classroom. And just thinking about how my classroom has changed so much. And then I made this transition into this role, and the things that maybe we don't think about or didn't think about as we were looking into this, because this was such uncharted water. And I remember like being introduced to a shiny new tool, and I wanted to use it with my students. And I didn't know the things to ask about what the impact could be, what kind of data and information does it collect and does it share, and what could these residual effects that we're just now thinking about in a post-COVID world, which totally changed things too. So this whole idea of how adolescence has been rewired is so fascinating to me. And his insights, it's like anything that makes you think. There are some things I agree with and I 100% can advocate for. There are things that make me think. And then there are sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. And that's what that good conversation is about. We don't have to agree with everything, but as long as it makes us think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. In the title, it's The Anxious Generation. And so, when you pick up this book, you are maybe going to assume that a lot of it is going to be feeding why maybe this generation tends to be more anxious than others. But really, I've enjoyed, and I know we've just gotten started, that there's lots of different ideas and thoughts into this generation and what makes them so much more than just labeling them anxious. Did you guys pick up on that too?
Yes. And like going a little bit of a different way is it would, before I started this book, it was almost like, I don't want to read that. I don't want to know about that. I like keep it away from me. But reading, like starting to read it, I'm reading along as we go. I did not read the whole book, but I find it so interesting that it's not just the US. This isn't the anxious generation of America. This is worldwide. This is something bigger than just what the US has done. And I think that that shows that it's big. This is something that it's not due to just one factor. It's more. It's not because of the iPhone. It's not because of the pandemic. It's not because of parenting. It's a combination of several factors that have happened that together made a significant change in the way that our, a childhood has changed into our young adults and the way that they feel about themselves and feel about other people. And that's where we have to make changes. And what I like so far is that it's not saying like, okay, here's the facts and well, it's doom and gloom. Yeah. But so far what I've read is, okay, we can fix this, but we have to do it together. And I like that.
Mm-hmm. That resonated with me too, Melissa. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there.
No, you're good.
Because I think, so much of my job in the last couple of years has been talking to teachers about finding that perfect blend of technology and plugged versus unplugged activities and, those kinds of things. And to me, it transcends just not the classroom. It's our whole world where we need to have that better balance of technology versus no technology and being intentional about disconnecting and resetting ourselves and focusing on interpersonal relationships rather than the digital sometimes. And I know, like, going back to what Amy said, I love the fact that I can set up a meeting like this and be virtual friends and chat with you, but I really, really value the time that we get together face to face.
Yeah. And we're fortunate that we started out as virtual friends, but we all have times where we do get to meet up, in person. If we didn't have that, would we still have the same connections? I don't know.
Yeah. And I could see us, just because of what we're used to, applying some of those social graces through the virtual friendship, so like maybe a younger generation may laugh at our initial texts because we're like, very clear, full sentences. Maybe we use, like appropriate emojis or exclamation points or capital letters when we weren't supposed to. And that generation may look at us and be like, what are you doing? But we might be like trying to like retrofit those like real in-person relationship feels into that virtual. I kind of chuckled a little bit because sometimes my kiddos will say that when my parents, who are almost 80, will text them. They'll be like, why does granddad always say dear, and then like write it like a letter, and it's just like, because he's trying to fit what he knows, his connections, with how to best communicate with you and meet you where you're at. And it's mobile and it's on the go. And, speaking of generations, something else that came up in this very first chapter was, every generation has really had a monumental experience, maybe a memory, something that could just really chalk it up to history. And what we normally find in those situations is that communities come together and they rally together. And I thought that was interesting that the author was like, that is not to blame for this surge in suffering. Like you can't blame, the Great Depression for like surge of suffering. Like, and you can't blame maybe one war or this or that. Is like, this is worldwide. Like, this is not just something that happened in one place in the world at one time. There is a common theme that is happening throughout this entire globe. And that's what this author, I think, is looking at. Did I say that clear? I'm not sure that I expressed that to them. It just really kind of caught me off guard because I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. I think each generation has their historical moments that they can talk about that may or may not have affected why things are the way they are. And this author's like, that's actually really not the case. Like, this is worldwide. There is alienation happening in schools worldwide. And it's not because one event happened in one part of the world. It's like, okay, interesting. I don't know that I've thought about it that way.
And they focused on this surge, this rise of anxiety, depression, which are internalizing disorders, where we take that and we experience those symptoms inwardly. We have the anxiety, the fear, the sadness, and we withdraw from social engagement as a byproduct of that anxiety or that depression. And when you look at the data that they provide on those charts, you can just see like there may be a little bit of a pretty steady trend, and then all of a sudden it just skyrockets. And thinking back to our experiences and in the classroom, and I guess it helps me see things maybe a little bit more clearly, like even in hindsight of, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other part of that too, and here's where I got the 90s. I knew I had it somewhere. It's affecting those who are born after 95. So that's where that, and girls are higher than boys. Yeah. But then when you really look at the data, it's because the girls started out higher with higher reporting than the boys. So it's like the trend is moving up steadily at the same rate. It's just the girls started out higher to begin with. But yeah, it is interesting because there's not another theory other than there's something to do with, we have the play-based childhood was taken away, and there's this introduction of anxious parents who that was fed into by what they're reading online.
And that stuck with me a lot. That piece right there, like I was so independent as a child. My parents let me go places and do things, and I would cook by myself. And I have noticed like that anxious parenting, and let's face it, we know the world can be an ugly, ugly place, and we have more ready access to that ugliness. So I'm sure that has contributed to that more anxious parenting. But it's fascinating because in those risks that we took as that independent child, we learned some of that problem solving and how to handle defeat and challenges. And those are not things that our youth get to experience so much anymore because we want to make things easier for them.
Or you're being a good parent.
Yes.
Because you're making sure that they're safe.
Yes.
And you're making sure that, they have these quality experiences. Whereas, when we were younger, we were with our friends or with our siblings or our family, and we were out, playing in the dirt or making up a game. And if there was a problem, we figured it out amongst ourselves. There wasn't a parent right there to help us. So that solution came about by us, and we worked together. And so there's, that right there has been replaced.
And we didn't
go ahead.
I'll say we didn't have the ability to put somebody on blast if they slighted us.
Yep.
Because they talk about how, especially for girls, the social media element is so intrinsically like transformational for them at the age of adolescence, because girls tend to get involved in the social media aspect and the boys go more to gaming, and the two different things, they're different, but yet they're kind of the same in the results of how it impacts their behavior and their development. And but social media, I can't imagine being a young girl with social media right now and the challenges and the stressors that faces. I know, Amy, both of you have, daughters that have grown up in that age.
Well, and I think you brought up something really interesting, because one of the things that I was hoping to get from this first chapter, this introduction, was a little bit of kind of like a guide map of like, okay, what do I need to know in order to be a successful reader of this book? That sounds silly, but like I knew I was kind of cracking a book and getting into something that I thought, okay, what prior knowledge do I need to know? And one of the things in there is that definition of generations, that definition of real versus virtual friendships. What does play-based look like today versus back then? And then what are, like, I don't know if you guys remember the child development classes that we used to take in training to being a teacher. Like, you had to take child psychology classes. Like, by the age of this baby will now have grown up and is now doing parallel play. And now this child is now this age and you should be expecting, and so forth. And like, I know in just 20 years of teaching, most of those with 5 to 7-year-olds, the idea of we versus me has completely changed since just 2005. And even more so before then, right? Mm-hmm. And like this idea of, when we were little, like, go on out for the day during the summer, someone will feed you peanut butter and jelly, and just as long as you're back before this, like you knew a time, and that that community took care of you. And now it's like a virtual community that we're trusting our kiddos in. So if you read along with us, there's a lot of really good, like, just straight information about what is going to be discussed in the book, as far as, what defines an adolescent, what is, brain development that we're looking at, what do children need to do in order to develop healthy adult habits, just things like that made me feel better about continuing to turn the pages, not only to help our listeners, but to help myself professionally in the classroom. And I mean, like you said, Diana, like most importantly, like as a parent, I mean, I've got junior high and high school kids right now, and it's, it's real. Like this digital access conversation is very real. And so I'm just really thankful to be able to start the conversation and be a part of it. I'm trying to think. I feel like I had one more point and I can't think of it just yet. You'll have to give me a second.
Well, I think it's so good to keep that in mind too, that, as I think it was Melissa that said this earlier, there's not any one thing that has contributed to this. And it's going to be a change in a thought and how we approach a lot of things. I know I'm trying to reevaluate the messaging that I deliver to my teachers about PD, and making sure we work on that balance and that healthy, intentional use of the technology. And then I think about in our personal lives and at home, and things that we need to change and alter. And I don't have children at home, but like even myself, I'm trying to make that habit where for 2 or 3 hours at night, I put my phone away in another room and I disconnect so that I can focus. Because even as a middle-aged woman, I find myself doom scrolling, and then I'm not as productive as I should be. And I have to set those boundaries for myself. Now you transfer that to a young person who doesn't have that ability to make those decisions for themselves. They need to be coached in that. All they know is this virtual world that they are so immersed in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I know that the next chapter is the backstory, that decline of the play-based childhood. And something that I'm hoping to get from that chapter is just a little bit more, again, backstory, background on, like what I think it'll be so interesting for us to like look back at like our childhoods and be like, oh, really? That was actually what was going on. Okay, cool. Like, I guess I just didn't realize, but now we can look back on it and kind of think about it, talk about it with the author, and then also compare that with what's happening not only in our classrooms, but, like in our communities. It'll be so interesting just to kind of move ahead with the conversation and see where are they going to go from here, and what really is the great rewiring, of childhood.
I know these 13 chapters, there's a lot to unpack. And I know over the next 7 sessions, we've got a lot of reading to do, and a lot of thinking to do, and a lot of chatting to do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a little bit scary for me to think about, but I think what's more scary is that, like, not thinking about it. We have to figure out what can we do to make sure that our children can become healthy adults. That's what we want. That's our goal.
Yeah.
Yes, I found myself today repeating to the many students, the classes of students that came through, whether it was they had their device with them, or they were sitting at a brand new table, or they were in my room. I just found myself repeating, like, take care, be aware. Oh, take care, be aware. Oh, we're standing in line, hands to ourselves. Take care, be aware. I just found myself applying that mantra to like so many different situations. And so I can just maybe see that coming out again in this, as we keep talking.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this next few weeks.
For sure.
So we're so excited that you joined us for chapter 1. We hope you'll come back and join us for the rest of the sessions and learn along with us as we try to understand more about the anxious generation and this great rewiring of adolescence. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.